Hi. There is a way for the United States to end its occupation of Iraq and put the people of Iraq on a path that will lead to peace for all of us. The way forward is to secure Arab and Iranian cooperation on Iraq in exchange for undoing the damage that has been done to Palestinians. If the United States supported a one-state solution to the Israel-Palestine problem, we could reverse the course of a history that is headed for disaster. That state, we could call it New Canaan, would be comprised of Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel, with the Shaba farms given to Lebanon and the Golan Heights returned to Syria. In New Canaan, both today's Palestinians and Jews that choose to stay would be citizens, and all citizens would have equal rights. For Jews that choose to leave, if the United States took the money that it spends on the Department of Homeland Security and the war in Iraq and spent that money instead on an agency that offers Israeli Jews expedited U.S. citizenship and helps them find homes and jobs and schools in the United States, then we would no longer need a Department of Homeland Security, and we could help the Muslim world fix Iraq. Understanding why such an extraordinary plan is requires realizing that the planes that flew into the World Trade Center in 2001 took off from Boston in only a superficial sense. In a more important sense, Boston was just a long layover for planes that took off from New York, from UN Plaza in 1947, on the day that the United States forced the United Nations to carve Israel out of Palestine, thus making Palestinians pay for what Germans did to Jews in World War II. For Americans, New Canaan would mean coming to grips with an historical wrong-headedness in our own country. But we have no acceptable alternative, because the injustice of making Palestinians pay for a crime that they did not commit will never go away. And the crime of propping up governments in the Middle East and around the world that acquiesce to the existence of Israel will never be forgiven. We need to act forthrightly and soon, before the compound interest on that debt overtakes us in the form of terrorism. Terrorism that is ultimately payback. Payback from people who are extremists because they have been driven to extremes. Driven to extremes by the craziness of the Christian and Jewish belief that there is a God who gave Israel to his chosen people. The craziness of 2 billion Christians who think that they get go-to-heaven points when they force the rest of the world to accept Israel. Would the Muslim world respond to New Canaan with enough enthusiasm to bring an end to terrorism? I am confident that their positive response would be overwhelming. But there's an easy way to find out in advance. We could ask them. The real question is whether we have the courage to follow such a plan. Do American Christians and American Jews have the courage to say to Israeli Jews that our fathers and our grandfathers were wrong when they created Israel, and their fathers and their grandfathers were wrong when they created Israel? Do we have the courage to say that it is not okay to make Palestinians pay for what Germans did to Jews? Do we have the courage to say that there is no God who hands out real estate contracts? 140 years ago, we had the courage to say that slavery was wrong. And undoing slavery entailed a war that cost more American lives than the Revolutionary War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and all of our other wars put together. The oppression that we have caused and continue to cause in the Middle East is ultimately as inexcusable as slavery. But we don't have to sacrifice so many lives to undo that oppression. We need the courage to undo Israel. And if we find that courage, there will be an enormous reward. The United States is a great nation, a nation that sowed the seeds of its own destruction in 1947. And we are beginning to see the darkness at the end of our tunnel. Ending Israel would take away that darkness. And bringing a few million new American Jewish citizens to the United States would go a long way toward relighting this nation's future. Thank you for listening.